In this week's Parasha, Parashat Ki Tisa, towards the end of the Parasha, Hashem says to Moshe, Re'eh karati b'shem Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur. Betzalel is given the job to design the kelim for the Mishkan, and the Torah says he's very wise and intelligent. He's able to design kelim worthy of being in the Mishkan, the place where Hashem, where God is present, his presence is felt. But the Torah also says, not only is Betzalel intelligent and wise, it says, Vayimale oto ruach Elohim. He's been filled with a godly spirit. Seemingly, Torah wisdom is not just an intellectual exercise and great capabilities of the brain, but there is also a godly spirit that rests on those that are close to the Torah and have within them the wisdom of the Torah. Similarly, many groups of Klal Yisrael Ashkenazi Jews say every day a pasuk in Tehillim. The Sfaradim say it on Mincha of Shabbat. Reshit Chochma Yirat Adonai Sechel Tov L'Chol Osehem. Reshit Chochma Yirat Adonai means the beginning of Chochma. And this means Chochmat Torah, the wisdom of the Torah. The beginning of the wisdom of Torah is Yirat Hashem, fearing God. What does fear got to do with wisdom and intellect? It has nothing to do with logical rationale, but it's got to do with Chochmat Torah. The wisdom of the Torah is closely connected to fearing God, to being a good person. In the Torah, Yir'ah and Chochmah, our behavior and our intellect are one. When you're learning other subjects, you can be the greatest mathematician, but it's got nothing to do with how you behave as a person, as a human being. The Chochmah of the Torah is not like that. It will only rest, it will only be present, it will only manifest alongside with good behavior and being a special person. I'd like to illustrate this point with a story of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk. He was a great Hasidic rabbi who passed away about 200 years ago in Poland. And his kever on his yahrzeit, which is this Friday, his menucha, his makom menucha, where he's buried, his burial site, is visited by many hundreds and thousands sometimes of mitpalelim, people who are there to get a yeshuah, a salvation from whatever problem they may have. And I'd like to share a story that I heard from somebody in Israel called Mrs. Amar. And I heard it from her, and it's about her, so it's a very special story to me. Mrs. Amar, many years ago, now she's around 80 years of age, Mrs. Amar had two daughters, one of which is married to my cousin. And she didn't have any more children after that for the duration of 6 years. One Shabbat, the Kalev Rebbe, a man who went through the Holocaust, a great rabbi unto his own right, stayed in Bnei Barak, exactly opposite where the Amars lived. He was there for Shabbat, and Mrs. Amar said to her husband, "Why don't you go and get a blessing from this rabbi?" After a short discussion, Mr. Amar was rather reluctant to do so. Mr. Amar went on Shabbat afternoon to the Kalev Rebbe, and he says to him, "We'd like a blessing. My wife asks for a blessing for us to have children, and specifically boys. They had 2 girls, and for 6 years, no children." And the Kalev Rebbe was in the middle of learning Noam Elimelech, which is a famous sefer written by Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk. And the Kalev Rebbe looked at Rabbi Mr. Amar and said to him, he lifted up the book and he said, "In the merit of Rabbi Elimelech, may you have sons." Mr. Amar smiled, said thank you, Shabbat Shalom, and went back to his home. A year and a half later, on Chaf Aleph Adar, the 21st of Adar, the yahrzeit, the Yom Menucha, the Nachala of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, the Amars, Mrs. Amar gave birth to a baby boy. 2 years later, as unlikely as this may sound, 2 years later, the Amars gave birth on Chaf Aleph Adar to a baby girl. And the following 2 years after that, the Amas welcomed twins, one boy and one girl, once again on Chaf Aleph Adar. 4 children, 4 siblings, all have the same birthday in the Hebrew calendar, the 21st of Adar, the Yom Ptira, the Yahrzeit of Rabbi Hye of Lezhensk. And that was who the Kalev Rebbe was learning at the time, and he said, in the merit of Rabbi Hye, may you have sons. So there's a beautiful story which we see the Chokhmah of the Torah. When we learn Torah, we call it Chokhmah. But let's not get confused. It's not about intelligence or rationale and logic, although there is all of that in there. It's also about being closer to God and having the Spirit of God rest upon one who is close to the Torah. Also allows them at times to perform miracles, because we know God is above nature, he's supernatural, and so to those who cling to him can experience that state of supernaturalness. Shabbat Shalom.